When my only son told me I was nothing but an embarrassment he wanted erased from his life, I collapsed right there in my little kitchen, the phone still clutched in my trembling hand. 3 days later, I was standing in the marble lobby of his corporate headquarters in Sao Paulo with evidence that could destroy his million-dollar empire. That's when I realized life is like a hand-knit sweater. Pull on one loose thread and even the most perfect facade unravels completely. If you're watching this, hit subscribe and tell me where you're from in the comments. Because trust me, this story twists more than a mountain road, and you'll want to be along for every turn. My name is Marlene Silva. For 72 years, I lived the quiet life in Ribeirão Pequeno, a village so peaceful you could hear the birds conversing in the morning. My days were filled with simple pleasures, tending my garden, knitting blankets for the church charity, and waiting for those precious phone calls from my son Bernardo. The boy who made it big, everyone in the village would say. Dona Marlene's son, the real estate mogul in the big city. I never corrected them when they exaggerated his success, even though I barely understood his business myself. What mother doesn't enjoy a little pride? I raised him alone after his father died when Bernardo was only 8. We didn't have much, but I worked my fingers raw cleaning houses so he could have the education I never got. When he earned that scholarship to the university in Sao Paulo, I cried for a week, half from joy, half from knowing our little home would feel emptier than the church on a rainy Monday. The years passed. His visits grew shorter, the calls less frequent. He married Cristina, a woman with porcelain skin who never quite looked me in the eye when they visited. They gave me a grandson, Felipe, who I've only held a handful of times in his 12 years. Still, I made excuses for them all. They're busy building a life, I'd tell my neighbor Dona Conceição when she asked why my son didn't visit more. Until that Thursday call that changed everything. I was making chicken soup, humming along to an old Roberto Carlos song on the radio. My ancient flip phone rang, and my heart did that little jump it always does when I see Bernardo's name. May, he said, his voice strangely formal. No, how are you, or sorry, it's been 3 months since I called. Script part separator, I need to talk to you about something important, he continued. My wooden spoon paused mid-stir. I could feel it coming, like the way my knee aches before rain. I've been thinking about this for a long time, he said, his voice as cold as January frost. My life is here in Sao Paulo now. My family, my business, my reputation, everything that matters. I leaned against the counter, suddenly needing the support. The thing is, May, I've built something significant here. My investors, my clients, they expect a certain image. And frankly, having ties to that little village doesn't fit with who I am now. What are you saying, filho? I whispered, though I already knew. I think it's better if we don't speak anymore. No more calls, no more of those packages you send Felipe. Cristina agrees it's for the best. The soup bubbled over, hissing on the hot stove. I couldn't move to turn it off. Bernardo, I'm your mother. A mother I barely remember having time for me, he cut in sharply. Always cleaning other people's houses, leaving me with neighbors. And now you're an embarrassment, May. The way you dress, how you speak. Felipe's friend's parents ask questions I don't want to answer. My legs gave out. I sank to the kitchen floor, the linoleum cool against my palm. I've set up a small monthly deposit to your bank account, he continued, as if discussing a business transaction. It should be enough for someone in your situation. Consider it closure. Closure? I finally found my voice. I am not a business deal you can settle, Bernardo. E your mother. This conversation is exactly why we need to end things, he sighed, sounding annoyed. Só emocional, só dramatic. This is final, mãe. Don't call this number again. Click. Just like that, 72 years of life, 27 years of motherhood, reduced to an inconvenient phone call he couldn't wait to end. I don't know how long I sat there on the kitchen floor. The soup burned, filling the house with acrid smoke. It didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Script part separator, I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My mind replayed every moment of raising Bernardo, the nights I'd come home exhausted from cleaning 3 houses in one day, still finding energy to help with his homework. The birthday when I'd saved for months to buy him that soccer ball he wanted. The proud tears when he showed me his university acceptance letter. Where had I gone wrong? By morning, something had shifted inside me. The tears had dried, leaving behind a strange clarity I'd never felt before. I stood at my kitchen window, watching the sunrise paint the hills golden, and realized I'd spent my entire life being exactly what everyone needed me to be. A dutiful daughter to my strict parents. A supportive wife to a husband who drank too much. A sacrificing mother to a son who now found me embarrassing. Who was Marlene? Just Marlene? I didn't know. And that realization stung more than Bernardo's rejection. I called my neighbor Conceição and asked to borrow her smartphone. Her eyebrows shot up. I'd always refused technology beyond my simple flip phone, but she brought it over without questions. You know how to use this? She asked. I'll figure it out, I said, with more confidence than I felt. 2 hours and many frustrating mistakes later, I'd done something I'd never done before. I'd searched for my son online. Conceição sat beside me, equally fascinated as images of Bernardo appeared. There he was, in an expensive suit at a charity gala. There with Cristina and Felipe at some beach resort. They're shaking hands with important-looking men in front of a towering glass building with Silva Investments emblazoned across it. He looks important, Conceição murmured. But I wasn't looking at my son anymore. I was staring at a news article headline from just last week. Silva Investments secures historic $40 million development deal. $40 million. My son was playing with $40 million while telling me I was an embarrassment he couldn't afford to acknowledge. Script part separator Something ardened inside me. Acid of determination I never knew I possessed. I need to go to São Paulo, I announced. Conceição nearly dropped her teacup. What? Marlene, you haven't left Ribeirão Pequeno in 15 years. Then I'm overdue for a trip. The next morning, I stood at my closet, staring at clothes that suddenly seemed to belong to someone else. Faded floral dresses, sensible shoes, cardigans mended so many times they were more patch than original fabric. None of it would do for the city. I took the tin box from beneath my bed, my emergency savings from years of putting aside a few reais here and there. It wasn't much, but it would be enough. 3 hours later, I walked out of the only clothing shop in our village with a simple navy dress and a pair of shoes that didn't scream countryside grandmother. The young salesgirl had looked at me strangely when I asked for something a city woman might wear. You look different, Conceição said when I stopped by to return her phone. I feel different, I replied. The next day, I boarded the bus to São Paulo with nothing but a small suitcase and an address I'd memorized from Bernardo's company website. I hadn't been to the city in years, and certainly never alone. Each kilometer that passed, I felt my heart pound harder. What would I do when I got there? I had no real plan, just a burning need to look my son in the eye and understand why the boy I'd sacrificed everything for had thrown me away like yesterday's trash. 6 hours later, the bus pulled into the terminal. São Paulo sprawled around me, a concrete jungle that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Noise, people, buildings that reached toward the sky like modern towers of Babel. I clutched my suitcase tighter and flagged down a taxi. Silva Investments, please, I told the driver, my voice steadier than I felt. Script part separator The taxi wound through streets choked with traffic, finally stopping before a gleaming skyscraper that seemed to be made entirely of glass. Silva Investments occupied the top 10 floors, according to the directory in the sleek lobby. I approached the security desk, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I'm here to see Bernardo Silva, I said, trying to sound like someone who belonged. The guard barely glanced up. Do you have an appointment? No, but I'm his mother. That got his attention. He looked up, eyes scanning me dubiously from my sensible shoes to my carefully combed gray hair. Mr. Silva doesn't have any appointments available today, he said firmly. I don't need an appointment to see my own son, I replied, surprised by the steel in my voice. He picked up his phone, speaking in hushed tones. A minute later, a young woman with a tablet emerged from the elevator. Mrs. Silva? She asked, her professional smile not reaching her eyes. I'm Camila, Mr. Silva's assistant. I'm afraid he's in meetings all day. I'll wait, I said simply, choosing a chair in the lobby with a clear view of the elevators. Camila's smile faltered. That's really not necessary. Perhaps we could schedule something for next month when his calendar opens up? Next month. He froze mid-sentence, head snapping up. For one unguarded moment, shock flashed across his face before he composed himself. "Excuse me, gentlemen," he said to his companions. "A small matter I need to address." He strode toward me, jaw tight. Up close, I could see new lines around his eyes that hadn't been there at Christmas 3 years ago, the last time he'd visited. "What are you doing here?" he hissed, gripping my elbow and steering me toward a corner away from the security desk. "I came to understand why my son would throw away his mother like garbage," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I told you on the phone." "You told me nothing that makes sense," I interrupted. "Not to a mother who worked herself to the bone so you could become the man standing before me." His eyes darted around the lobby, checking who might be watching. "This is exactly what I was talking about. You can't just show up at my workplace creating scenes." "This isn't a scene, Bernardo. This is a conversation you owe me." "E don't te owe you anything." "The monthly deposit started yesterday. That should be more than enough." "Money. My log solded for into my own ass. You think money is what you want from you?" "It's all I'm offering," he said coldly. "Now, I've called a taxi. It will take you to a hotel tonight, and tomorrow you'll go back to Ribeiro Pequeno where you belong." "Where I belong?" Something snapped inside me. While you play with millions of dollars, you can't even spare a phone call to the woman who raised you. His face paled. "What do you know about my business?" Script part separator, "I know enough," I said, watching his expression carefully. $40 million for your latest project? His eyes narrowed. "You ver bem researching me." A small crowd of late-working employees had gathered near the elevators, pretending not to watch the drama unfolding in their lobby. "This conversation is over," he snapped. "The taxi is waiting outside." He signaled to the security guard, who approached hesitantly. "Please escort this woman to the taxi," Bernardo instructed. The guard looked uncomfortably between us. "Sir?" "She's confused," Bernardo said loudly. "Possibly needs medical attention. Make sure she gets safely to the hotel." That's when something inside me transformed completely. The hurt crystallized into something harder, sharper. "I am not confused," I announced, my voice ringing through the marble lobby. "I am Marlene Silva, and this man, this successful businessman, is ashamed to admit I am his mother because I come from a simple village and have calloused hands from decades of honest work." Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Bernardo's face flushed dark red. "Security!" he barked. 2 guards appeared instantly. "This woman is trespassing. Remove her immediately." As they approached, a young woman stepped forward from the crowd. "Mr. Silva," she said hesitantly, "I don't think this is." "Back to work, Mariana," he snapped. "This doesn't concern you." The guards each took one of my arms, gentle but firm. "I'll go," he said, holding my head high. "But this isn't over, Bernardo." As they escorted me outside, I heard the young woman, Mariana, call after me. "Dona Marlene, wait." She ran after us, ignoring Bernardo's sharp command to return to her desk. "Take this," she whispered, pressing a business card into my palm. "Call me tomorrow." Script part separator, I spent the night in a modest hotel, staring at Mariana's card. Why would one of Bernardo's employees risk her job to help me? Sleep came in fitful bursts, my dreams filled with Bernardo's cold eyes and the humiliation of being escorted out like a criminal. Morning brought clarity. Whatever game my son was playing, I would no longer be a passive participant. I called the number on the card. "Café Palista, 30 minutes, Mariana said quickly when she answered. "It's 2 blocks from your hotel." The café was busy with morning customers. Mariana sat in a corner booth, nervously checking her watch. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with intelligent eyes and a serious expression. "I don't have much time," she said as I sat down. "Mr. Silva has an emergency board meeting this morning about the Coastal Heights project." "Why are you helping me?" I asked directly. She hesitated. "I've worked at Silva Investments for 3 years. Things aren't what they seem." "What do you mean?" Your son has powerful enemies. And secrets. She glanced around before continuing. The Coastal Heights development. The $40 million project. There are irregularities in the financing. What kind of irregularities? Money that can't be traced. Investors who don't exist. She pulled a folded paper from her purse. This is a list of shell companies associated with the project. Companies registered in your name. I stared at the paper. In my name? That's impossible. 3 companies, all registered with your identification number. On paper, you're a major investor in your son's biggest project. My hands trembled. I never signed anything. Exactly. Her eyes met mine. Someone used your identity without your knowledge. That's fraud. Realization washed over me like ice water. That's why he cut me off. He's afraid I'll discover what he's done. Mariana nodded grimly. And if the authorities investigate, I'd be implicated, I finished. He's setting me up to take the fall. Script part separator, I stood up so quickly my chair scraped loudly against the floor. Heads turned in our direction, but I barely noticed. Inide proof, he said. My voice ash whisper. Real proof I can understand. Mariana looked around nervously. I've been collecting documents for weeks. Things didn't add up in the accounts I was managing. But we can't talk here. She checked her watch. I need to get back before I missed. Where can we meet? My apartment, tonight at 8. I'll text the address. She scribbled a number on a napkin. Can you buy a prepaid phone today? Bernardo might be tracking your calls. The idea that my own son would spy on me should have seemed absurd. Instead, it felt terrifyingly plausible. I spent the afternoon in a daze, wandering through a shopping center where I bought the cheapest prepaid phone available. The young clerk had to show me twice how to activate it. By evening, Mariana had texted an address in a modest neighborhood far from the gleaming towers of Bernardo's world. Her apartment was small but neat, with books everywhere and a desk covered in papers. She offered me tea with trembling hands. I'm risking everything showing you these, she said, pulling a thick folder from a locked drawer. If Bernardo discovers I've been gathering evidence, why are you helping me? I asked again. She hesitated. My father was like your son, successful, ruthless. He used my grandmother's identity for fraudulent investments. When it all collapsed, she went to prison while he fled to Paraguay. Her eyes hardened. I won't let another elderly woman be sacrificed for a man's greed. The document she showed me might as well have been written in another language. Financial statements, corporate registrations, transfer records. But even I could understand the basics. 3 companies registered under my name in CPF had received millions from Silva Investments for consulting services on the Coastal Heights project. These companies then funneled the money to offshore accounts, Mariana explained. It's classic money laundering. How much? I asked, my mouth dry. Nearly 15 million reais so far. My head spun. What happens when this all comes crashing down? Whoever owns these companies faces prison. Tax fraud, money laundering. She met my eyes. That would be you, Dona Marlene. Script part separator, And all this time, I thought he cut me off because I embarrassed him, I whispered. Mariana shook her head. That's just a convenient excuse. The real reason is he needed you completely isolated before the authorities start asking questions. A mother who hasn't spoken to her son in months is less likely to be seen as a co-conspirator. The realization was like a physical blow. Iderese de monster. What do we do? I asked, my voice small in the quiet apartment. We have 2 options, Mariana said, suddenly businesslike. We take this to the authorities now, which means you'll spend months or years trying to prove your innocence while Bernardo likely escapes with most of the money. Or what? Or we get real proof that he did this without your knowledge or consent. Proof so damning he can't wriggle out of it. How do we do that? She took a deep breath. There's an investors' meeting next week for the Coastal Heights project. All the major players will be there. If we can get Bernardo to incriminate himself, recorded, in front of witnesses. He'd never admit anything with me in the room, I interrupted. Not if he knows you're there, she agreed. But what if you were someone else? The plan she outlined was so audacious, so completely outside my comfort zone, that my first instinct was to reject it entirely. Disguise myself as a wealthy investor? Secretly record my own son confessing to fraud? I'm a 72-year-old woman from a village, not James Bond, I protested. But Mariana was relentless. Look at what he's done to you already. He's stolen your identity, set you up to take the fall for his crimes, and cut you out of his life. Do you really want to let him get away with that? Script part separator equals. Her words struck something primal in me. No, I didn't want him to get away with it. For the first time in my life, I wanted justice more than I wanted peace. I'll do it, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. The next 5 days passed in a blur of preparation. Mariana introduced me to her cousin Sophia, a makeup artist who worked in theater. Sophia studied my face with professional interest. We'll need to change everything: hair, makeup, posture, she declared. By the time I'm done, your own son won't recognize you. I surrendered myself to Sophia's expert hands. She dyed my gray hair a rich auburn and styled it in an elegant bob. She taught me to walk differently, to speak with a slight accent from Rio Grande do Sul. Most importantly, she helped me become Elisa Montero, a wealthy widow looking to invest in São Paulo real estate. Mariana, meanwhile, secured me an invitation to the investors' meeting through contacts I didn't want to know about. She also obtained a tiny recording device disguised as a brooch. The night before the meeting, we rehearsed one final time in Mariana's apartment. Remember, Mariana coached, you need to get him talking about the shell companies. Specifically, how they were formed and who controls them. And if he recognizes me, I asked, the fear I'd been suppressing bubbling up. He won't, Sophia assured me. Trust me, you're unrecognizable. Looking in the mirror, I had to admit she was right. The woman staring back at me wasn't Marlene Silva, the simple village grandmother. She was sophisticated, confident, someone who belonged in Bernardo's world. As I practiced my new identity, something unexpected happened. With each passing hour, I felt myself standing taller, speaking more confidently. It wasn't just the expensive clothes or the makeup. Something fundamental was shifting inside me. For the first time in decades, I wasn't defined by being someone's mother. I was becoming my own person. The morning of the investors' meeting arrived with a thunderstorm that matched my turbulent emotions. Dressed in a tailored navy suit Mariana had helped me select, I barely recognized myself. Ready? Mariana asked, checking the recording device one last time. I took a deep breath. Ready. Script part separator equals. The investors' meeting was held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, in a ballroom dripping with crystal chandeliers and old money. I stood in the entrance, momentarily frozen. What was I doing here, pretending to be someone I wasn't? Elisa Monteiro, e practice dander mais breve. Vido from Porto Alegre. Looking for investment opportunities. A waiter offered champagne. I took a glass to steady my nerves, sipping slowly as I surveyed the room. About 50 people mingled in small groups, men in expensive suits, women dripping in jewelry that cost more than my house. And there he was. Bernardo stood near a scale model of what must be the Coastal Heights development, gesturing animatedly to 3 attentive men. My son, desalisma. My son, the fraud. Remember, approach from his left side, Mariana had coached. He never pays attention to people coming from that direction. I circled the room slowly, playing the part of the curious investor. When I finally approached the model, Bernardo was alone, reviewing notes on his tablet. Impressive project, I said, my voice pitched slightly lower than normal, with the hint of an accent Sophia had taught me. He looked up, professional smile already in place. Not a flicker of recognition in his eyes. Elisa Monteiro, e é que estende de mais rende. I'm considering diversifying my portfolio. Bernardo Silva, he replied, his handshake firm. Always pleased to meet potential investors. I understand the returns are quite creative, I said, using the exact phrase Mariana had suggested. His eyes narrowed slightly, calculating. Perhaps we should discuss the more nuanced aspects of the investment structure privately. I'd like that, I said, heart pounding. Particularly those special purpose vehicles I've heard about. 3 of them, I believe. That got his attention. You're well informed, Senora Montero. Let's step into the private lounge. Script part separator, He led me to a small room off the main ballroom, closing the door behind us. Instantly, his demeanor changed, less polished charm, more calculating intensity. You know about the SPVs, he said, studying me closely. May I ask who referred you to our investment opportunity? Let's just say I have connections who appreciate financial creativity, I replied, willing my hands not to tremble. Bernardo nodded, seemingly satisfied. The structure we've developed offers unique advantages. The 3 special purpose vehicles allow us to move capital efficiently while minimizing certain regulatory complications. Ownership of these vehicles is discreet? I asked, heart hammering against my ribs. Completely. He smiled now, relaxing. On paper, they're controlled by a rural property owner with no financial sophistication. Someone who wouldn't understand a balance sheet if their life depended on it. I felt sick but forced myself to smile. And this person poses no risk to investors? None whatsoever. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. She's entirely in the dark. A simple old woman who trusts me completely. By the time any authorities might ask questions, the assets will be long secured offshore. The casual cruelty in his voice, discussing me as if I were nothing but a convenient tool, felt like a physical blow. And if this woman discovers what you've done with her identity? I couldn't help asking. Impossible. He waved dismissively. She's isolated, technologically illiterate, and frankly, lacks the mental capacity to comprehend something this sophisticated. The perfect patsy. My hand tightened around my champagne glass. One movement and I could throw it in his face, reveal myself, scream the truth to everyone in the next room. Instead, I touched the brooch at my lapel, ensuring it was still recording. Very clever, I managed. Tell me more about how you established these companies without her knowledge. For the next 20 minutes, my son incriminated himself so thoroughly it was almost comical. He explained how he'd forged my signature on corporate documents, how he'd bribed a notary to certify paperwork I'd never seen, how he'd even created false bank accounts using my identification. The beauty of it, he boasted, swirling expensive scotch he'd poured himself, is that even if authorities trace everything back to her, who would believe a sophisticated financial scheme was orchestrated by an old woman who can barely use a telephone? The prosecutor would take one look at her and conclude she must be covering for someone else. Someone like her son? I suggested. He laughed. Who happens to be estranged from her for over a year now. No contact, no visits, no calls that could be traced. We've established a clear separation. Quite thorough, I murmured, fighting to keep my voice steady. Necessary precautions, he replied. In this business, you eliminate all vulnerabilities. She was my biggest one. Because she's your mother? Something flickered across his face. Biology is irrelevant. She served her purpose raising me. Now she's serving another purpose. I'd heard enough. More than enough. I stood up abruptly. Is something wrong? Bernardo asked, suddenly wary. Not at all, I said. I simply need to make a call before committing further. You've given me much to consider. Of course, he said, all smooth professionalism again. I'll be in touch tomorrow for your decision. I nodded and walked out, my legs somehow carrying me despite feeling like they might collapse beneath me. In the hotel lobby, I spotted Mariana waiting anxiously by a potted palm. Did you get it? She whispered as we walked briskly toward the exit. Every damning word, I replied, unpinning the brooch with shaking fingers. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the city streets gleaming under streetlights. I took a deep breath of the night air, feeling something close to exhilaration cutting through my pain. What now? I asked. Now we end him, Mariana said, her eyes gleaming with purpose. For the first time since arriving in Sao Paulo, I smiled, a real smile that reached my eyes. Yes, I said quietly. Now we end him.